So Scott is a fellow of the AIA. He's a masonry expert, and he also, for IMI, leads the masonry detailing series, which is kind of like a precursor to this. It kind of started him on this path of working with SketchUp. You did hear Rob at the beginning, before lunchtime. Rob's still here. Lamb-based it a little bit at SketchUp, but many of us find it to be very useful as 3D modeling, and Scott has really worked in that field a lot, so I think you're going to find some very positive uses for using it. Scott?
Okay, thank you very much, David. Welcome, you guys. I think I know a lot of you here, but some of you I have not met. I work in the building. I've been asked a number of times today, where am I from? I live in Naperville. I work in this building in Addison. I have the pleasure of working with the union bricklayers, tile setters, plasterers, tuck pointers, cement masons, terrazzo mechanics, all here under one roof. So we're all about training, as you might have gathered, walking around the facility. IMI represents the union craft workers and union contractors. Of course, today we're talking about what happens before construction, but it's all tied together, and I think we're going to see that today. All right, I know I'm not the only one in the room who graduated from IIT with an architecture degree. How many Scarlet Hawks do we have besides myself? A handful. Excellent. So you're familiar with Mies van der Rohe, and Mies has this great quote. I'm not going to read it to you, but you can read it on the screen, about architecture and where it starts. We're going to talk today not about putting bricks together, but we're going to kind of reverse engineer a masonry wall. I'm going to tell you why we're going to do that. We're going to reverse engineer the wall so that you guys can understand as design professionals what a wall is really composed of, or what it could be composed of. And I think that's going to help you as you approach designing with masonry, because designing with masonry today is not as simple as it once was. There are a lot of things going on with our masonry walls. So I'm going to present a couple of things. I'm going to present the wall builder. I'm going to present the wall systems library, and those are two things that are related. Okay, first you build the wall, and when a bunch of people build walls, we have a library. And then I'm going to also talk a little bit about the masonry detailing series, which is a precursor to BIM. The function of the wall systems library is, as you see the goals on the screen, it will simplify, standardize, and summarize for the benefit of all of us here in the room. We're going to simplify the way masonry is considered. We're going to take a very complex system and really break it down into its component parts so that you can make well-educated decisions in the design process. Aside from that, we're going to standardize the way masonry walls are classified, categorized, and considered. And that's a huge job. You're going to hear later from Tom Cuneo about the Masonry Unit Database, and from Jeff Elder from Interstate Brick. You've heard this MUD term from around today, Masonry Unit Database. We're not talking, I'm going to talk about a database of masonry walls. So that's the distinction. And it's a big task, and I think we've made a lot of progress. We're not there yet, but we're going to be standardizing the way masonry walls are classified. And eventually in phase 2 of this program, we're going to impart smart data within the wall systems so that you can have at your fingertips what the properties of that wall are. So starting off with, I had lunch yesterday with a group of you at La Hacienda down the street. Okay, it's a Mexican restaurant. We had the buffet, which is really easy. You just pick up a plate and take what you like. But if we ordered off the menu at La Hacienda, which is kind of a mom and pop, traditionally Mexican joint, looks like this. It's confusing. It's hard to understand, hard to make out, hard to make choices, really, because there are so many choices, and you don't really know what looks good. It all looks good, right? Whereas what I'm going to talk about today is the modern linear decision-making process. And some modern restaurants will present you with the menu. You choose your meat, you choose whether you want it in a tortilla or in a bowl, and then those are kind of your main choices, right? And then you choose your condiments, and I'm going to, and this is the only burrito slide I have, so bear with me. But I do want to kind of draw that analogy and compare it to how we approach designing a masonry wall. I mean, there are times when we don't want to think in a linear fashion, but there are times, like in the early stages of the job, where you just need to make early decisions, and you want to be able to do so in a systematic way, and that's what this is going to do for you. So I'm going to tell you the premise of the wall systems library and the wall builder, which is the tool that will generate the wall systems library. The premise is to think of the wall in 8 sub-assemblies, never more than 8, maybe less than 8, maybe only 1. All right? You're always going to have sub-assembly A, structure. That's the meat in your burrito. And it's wall structure. It's not building structure. It's what's holding the wall up. All right? It might be beef, it might be chicken, it might be veggies. So that's what you're in the mood for. That's the meat of the wall. And as an architect, you have an idea what you want the wall to look like. You want a stone wall, or a brick wall, or a terracotta wall. And that's the exterior finish on the wall. And then along the way, we have insulation, we have air barrier, we have sheathing, maybe. If we have masonry backup or a concrete backup of some sort, we don't necessarily have sheathing. I don't like onions on my burrito, so I'm going to skip the drainage insert. Okay, so there are many choices, and what we end up with is a very quick way to make early decisions. Oh, and then there's kind of the afterthought, the interior finish. That's the sauce on the burrito. That may or may not even be in your scope. You might want to finish the wall on the inside, or maybe you just want to leave it bare, exposed concrete block. We're kind of concerned with that, but not really. So, once again, we have our structure. Now we're using a wall as an example. We may have a sheathing of some sort. Everything else is optional. And we could stop right at structure. That's a single white wall. There are many excellent examples of single white clay masonry and concrete masonry walls. So this is one example. I'm just going to kind of click through here, and you can see how you can quickly put a wall together. And we give you choices, all right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some choices here. This is from the A subassembly structure. We've got different masonry and different stud backings and even concrete. AAC is what's on there. But we're constantly going to build these. I'm going to demonstrate this in a minute, but this is a growing collection. You know, there might be 8 materials represented on each one of these slides, but I don't want you to think that those are the only choices you have. But you'll be given a menu. And by the way, did you know that Chipotle, you can order off the menu. You can order, for example, half chicken, half steak. They don't tell you. They don't put it on the menu, but you can customize your order. So we're going to kind of enable you to do that as well. But we want to present you, just like Chipotle presents you with the most common choices, we're going to present you with the most common types of attachment, air barrier, cladding, etc. And this is just kind of a gift to show you different combinations of materials in anchored veneer and single white, and we also now have adhered veneer options that I'll demonstrate in a minute. So I think you can kind of see where we're going with this, is we want to, and there's hundreds of thousands of combinations of materials you can put together. And what do we do with those? What do we do with those hundreds of thousands of walls? Ideally, we want to identify each wall with a standard name and a standard number. Wouldn't it be nice to have a standard nomenclature in the industry? And believe it or not, it hasn't been done yet in the masonry industry. And we're working toward that, and I think we're making some progress. And I like to use the Tile Council of North America as an example. It's a different trade. It's also one of the masonry trades. But I like to use this as an example of how an industry, in the construction industry, a subset of the construction industry, has organized and identified common tile assemblies by names and numbers. This is an illustration of the Tile Council Handbook Detail F111, which is an unbonded sanded cement setting bed with a, unbonded from the substrate of concrete with a cleavage membrane with a thin set mortar adhering the tile to the setting bed. And any tile contractor who's been in the business for even just a few years is going to know an F111 floor. In fact, in specifications, we often see in the tile section, tile floors, F111, tile walls, W171. And that's how tile assemblies are identified. And I think that's a great example, and I think it would really kind of clarify a lot of the mystery that surrounds masonry, because you can do so many things with masonry, but if we start identifying these systems by wall name and by wall number, and that's what this program is going to do for us. All right, and it's going to work with the masonry unit database, and I think probably we should have had the MUD presentation before this one, because Or maybe not, maybe not. Maybe we think about the wall first and then the individual unit, so this works. But the key to the numbering system, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but I think it's worth explaining a little bit because that's I think you all have an interest in how information is organized. And what we're doing is we are tagging each wall with a 3-tier series of digits. Right? There's two digits in the first tier, and it's very simple. The first tier is just the cladding. So if you want a brick wall, it's going to be a 0-1 wall. If you want a stone wall, a rubble stone laid up in an ashlar pattern, it's going to be a 0-4 wall. If you want a dimension, or sorry, a 0-3. If you want a dimension stone wall like marble or granite or any cut to size dimension stone, it's a 0-4 wall. So tier 1 in the system couldn't be any more simple. All right. Tier 2 talks about the wall's structure and its system. When I say system, we are kind of at a very basic level thinking about masonry walls in 3 general categories. There are adhered veneer walls, there are anchored veneer walls, and there are single-wide masonry walls. Okay. So tier 2 communicates all that information, what the structure is and actually what type of system it is. And then tier 3 is going, and that's the longer string of numbers, is going to communicate the insulation, the air and moisture barrier, the method of attachment. And again, we only have attachment in the case of an anchored veneer. There may be a physical anchor or a wall tie. And in the adhered veneer example, the attachment would be a bond coat, excuse me, a bond coat of mortar that may or may not have the lath reinforcement or wire mesh reinforcement. So that's what we're defining as attachment for adhered. Single wipe, there's no cladding, so therefore there's no need for attachment. This is a screenshot of the index, and let's see. So at one point I was trying to do this myself and manually assign numbers. When I say myself, we have a team of people at the IMI and also on the BIM committee, which have provided a great deal of input, which we're very grateful for that. But very quickly, you know, this took a long time for me to build these walls manually and go through and assign, you know, obviously the number is based on what combination of components you have over here. So we thought this is kind of silly. Why don't we just automate the whole thing? So we enlisted the services of Viatechnic, which Anton Dabunkio is here with Viatechnic. They're a local web developer and software developer, and they've been great to work with. And what I probably should have mentioned this at the very beginning. We are very early in we are early in the stages of development. I'm not presenting you a finished product here. But what I will say is that we expect this tool that I'm about to show you to be online in a matter of weeks. Okay, so it's not years away. I don't even think it's months away. I think it's more like weeks away. So what I want to do now, let's see. Oh, okay. So I'm going to take you through the wall builder tool. And this is not the URL. This is just a temporary URL. So we don't, you know, I can't stop you from writing this down, but we don't really want you to do anything with that right now. All right, let me just refresh this because I'm expecting to see the menu here for the wall builder. Here we are. All right. So the logic is this: we always start with the structure because I think you know 2 things going in as designers. You know what your wall, what the guts of your wall is going to be, and you know what it's going to look like. So let's start with the structure. We just click on the little down arrow, and I'm going to build 3 walls. We'll do an anchored veneer, we'll do an adhered veneer, and we'll do a single wipe. So let's just pick for the wall structure, concrete masonry 8 inches. So I'll click on that. I know I want to build a stone wall. Okay, so we'll click on stone. That's the cladding, and now let's go to the items in between. Now we selected concrete masonry as a backing. Sheathing's going to pop up, but there's not going to be any options because we have concrete masonry. We don't need sheathing. So the only option is no sheathing. So we'll pick that one. Air and moisture barrier. We've got fluid applied, adhesive, insulation is air barrier, building felt, etc. We'll do in this case, let's just say a fluid applied. Insulation, we have many choices. Let's do polyiso. Drainage, we can have just an airspace. We can have nothing at all, which is basically the same as an airspace, I suppose. We'll do the mesh type in. Well, for stone, we'll do a drainage insert, the channel type drainage insert. Now, there's some of you are familiar with mortar net. That's the 10-inch high accessory that you place at the bottom of the cavities. I'm going to go into this in more detail in a minute, but we're not showing any mortar net. We're not showing any flashing. We're not showing any expansion joints because those are all special conditions. All we're showing here is the field of the wall. So this is a very targeted tool that lets you work out what your wall is. Okay, the special conditions will come later, and I'll get to that. Okay, so we've already selected our cladding. Our attachment, we've got to tie the stone veneer back to the concrete masonry, and let's say we'll use pintle type adjustable anchors. Interior finish, that's not in my scope, so I'll just say no finish on the interior. Now we can click on the generate wall button and type in our, we try not to be too ask too many questions, but we do want to know who you are. So that, and we're not going to play games and say we'll email you your PDF and after we spam you with a bunch of junk. We're going to give you the PDF right now. So I click on generate wall, right click on download PDF, and you get the PDF immediately. Yeah. And so this is the wall we built. You can download that. You can save it to your computer. What I love about this system is it automatically has given that wall a number and a name. Okay, the name is based on, the name is easy to understand. This is called a stone veneer on 8-inch concrete masonry backing, and that's the title. And then the subtitle, no sheathing, fluid applied, etc., etc. You can read it. Now, we know from experience, because our masonry detailing series has been posted on our website for, what, 10, 15 years, 10, 12 years, something like that. We know that thousands of users each day view and download our masonry details. This is not a masonry detail. This is a very schematic wall. But I think what we think will happen is when architects figure out that this tool is available, they will visit the site, they'll build walls, and this is going to inform the detailing. This is going to help further down the road, but this is something quick that you can generate. What I'm saying is we're going to eventually, in a very short period of time, I think, build a user-generated library of masonry walls that we'll keep track of, and soon we'll, very soon we'll have something like the Tile Council of North America Handbook equivalent of a wall library that has been really made by you, okay? Because I'm not going to sit in my office all day building walls and assigning numbers. You're going to do that, and your colleagues are going to be doing that. And we're going to see, what kind of walls are people interested in. So I'm going to value all the information that we see. If wouldn't it be interesting if 25% of the walls were rain screen walls? That would be very telling, and that would give us some direction as an industry. I don't know what we would do with that information, but it would be useful information. So all right, so that's an example of an anchored veneer wall. Let me reset the components and start from scratch. I don't think we need to build a single white wall. That's pretty straightforward. But let's build a stud backup this time. Steel, let's say steel studs, 6 inches with let's say base brick thin. And this time we do need to select a sheathing. So we have a few options of sheathing, and the way that Technic is helping us build this tool is that we will be adding new materials, and there will be some flexibility built into the system. For our air moisture barrier, let's say polyolefin sheet wrap, which is similar, which is Tyvek, basically 2 layers. Insulation, let's do mineral wool this time. And then drainage, we'll do the mesh type drainage mat. And so it's attachment now. This is a thin brick, so we're not using anchors. We're using some method of adhesive. So this is a smart system already. We don't even see the horizontal joint reinforcement, the eye and pintle, the corrugated wall ties. We only see what's allowed to be used with the system. So we'll select the mortar bed, and in terms of finish, we'll say wall board painted, and generate wall. And again, there's our detail, tagged with a unique number and a unique name. So let me go back to the PowerPoint and talk about this. Talk about some of the limitations, because I know that. All right, so you're like, all right, Scott, that's really cool, but so what? What does that do for me? This is not intended to be a masonry detailing series. You still have to design your own details, but now that you have generated your wall, at least you have a starting point where you can start picking very specific materials and start thinking about how those materials come together and all the special conditions that you need to show. So it's not a detailing guide. It's not a specification, but it will inform the specifications, because now you have a starting point of what's contained in your wall. So the idea is that you would use this at the front end of your job. You would then detail your job, and there are other references like the Masonry Detailing series that we'll look at in a second. And then I wanted to just, it doesn't stop with the drawings, right? It gets executed in the field, and that's where also where the IMI comes in. We provide the labor, the trained, skilled labor who are going to actually execute your details in the field. So that's really that's what we're all about. The other stuff is a way to get you there, but we provide the labor, and we do so with our very comprehensive training programs. So this would be an example of that stone veneer wall. We have concrete masonry backup, we have dowels and reinforcement, control joint material, the grout goes in, the air barrier, the transition membrane, the adhesive for the metal drip edge of the flashing system, the metal drip edge, the through wall flashing, the termination bar, mechanically fastened to the backing, insulation, the joints in the insulation are treated in this case, drainage material. So this is what you would do, maybe not in a 3D fashion, but in 2D. But I'm going to show you what the link is in a minute between the wall systems library and the Masonry Detailing series. Fasteners, wall tie mechanisms, our veneer, weeps, and expansion joint material here. So that's the detail. But the idea is it's much easier for you to generate a detail like this when you already have gone through the decision-making process and you know what your wall is going to contain. So I want to take you now to kind of the companion program of the Masonry Detailing series, and that's going to be, the companion program of the Wall Systems Library, and that is the Masonry Detailing series. And that is right here, for example. So you get there, let's see, you get there from our home page, imiweb.org. I'm trying to, I had some of these preloaded, but anyway, just do it like this. We used to have a shortcut, masonrydetails.org, but I don't know that that's working. So, but imiweb.org is our homepage, and so that's really all you have to know. And the MDS, Masonry Detailing Series, is always a direct link onto our homepage because it's one of the most accessed areas of our website. So we know that there's a demand for that. Then we have, different details: concrete block details, stone details, and these are static details. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but they're details that you can download, and we don't care if you copy and paste them or use them, and you can manipulate them too, and we'll get to that. So let's take this one, for example, 01.030.0302. And by the way, the numbering system in the Wall Systems Library there's a parity with the numbering system in the masonry detailing series. So 01 is always brick, and just I won't bore you with the details, but understand there is a logic to the numbering system. So here's the home page for this particular detail. It's a base of wall detail. It's an anchored veneer. And we have a GIF here which has the materials coming in. If you want to download the 3D version, you'll just get a PDF that looks like that. Many of these we have drawn in 2D, so if you want to download the 2D detail in DWG format, you can do that. And if you want to view this detail on, if you want to download the SKP file, you can do that. So I'm gonna save some time because I already have the website preloaded on the 3D warehouse. So if you click on download the SKP file, that's the SketchUp file, you can do that directly from the IMIweb.org homepage. Or 3D Warehouse, you might be familiar if you're SketchUp users, you'll know 3D Warehouse is the repository for user generated models. So here is the IMI page on the 3D Warehouse. We have, for example, 5 stucco details, 3 window door details, 39 masonry details. So if we click on that, if you're looking for traditional masonry details as opposed to ceramic tile or whatever, you can view those through here. If you like this expansion jointed window, if that looks like that's appropriate for your job, you can download it here. You can view it. This sometimes this functionality takes a minute to load, but if you're not ready to commit to downloading that model, if you want to learn more about it, look, so you see this. This isn't a problem with the IMI site. This is a problem with the 3D Warehouse site. You used to be able to rotate around that model and view it from all angles and get more information, and then you can decide if you like it enough that you want to download it. But I think you can see that there are details on 3D Warehouse. To click download, all right, so there's issues that SketchUp is having with the preview function. But if you wanted to download it, you would click on the model that you'd like to download, and then there should be a download. Button. Well, we're just in the library. So here's a terrazzo detail. You just click on the download right there, agree to the terms of use, etc. So I have one open here. I'm going a little bit off on the tangent, and I'm going to get back to the wall systems library in a minute. But this is an example of, I wouldn't even call this a detail. This is a kind of a bunch of details built into a wall section. But if you're interested, we make these components available to you. So if you like this brick and you want to steal this brick and you don't want to build your own, and you say, wow, that's a perfect utility brick. Well, is it perfect? I always verify. You click on the tape measure, because many times you don't know who built these models, if they're to scale or not. But a quick, dimensional check will confirm that that's actually whoever made that model knew what they were doing. So, and you can save this as an SKP file and manipulate it and use it. Any questions about the masonry detailing series before we get back on the wall systems library? There are two products that really go hand in hand. So let me just go back to my PowerPoint here. All right. In phase 2, see, the first thing we need to just get this thing launched, the wall builder, get it launched, see and get your input as users and see what kind of walls you're building and if our tool suits your needs or if it doesn't suit your needs. Then, and I don't have a timetable, we don't have a timetable for this, but eventually we're going to assign data to those walls. You can envision that index of thousands of walls, and this is an example of some cost data that could be assigned. Now, the problem with assigning cost data is it's going to vary depending on the market that you are in the country. Labor scales vary widely, and material prices go up and down. So I think what we're going to probably start with is going to be 2 things: fire resistance ratings and R values. So back in that index, you can build your wall. When the PDF gets pushed to you of your wall that you built, you can see how many hours of fire resistance that wall has. and what the R value is. So I realize we're not exactly talking about BIM here in its truest form, but it's this is a project that the IMI is, is well on our way with the support of the BIM-M initiative. So I definitely thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. I'll take questions. I've got some handouts that Smart Dynamics of Masonry, which is one of the magazines that David Biggs mentioned earlier. We thank Betty Young and Smart Dynamics for helping us, be a mouthpiece to promote the use of BIM in the masonry industry. So we have an article on the Wall Systems Library and some of the logic that's contained in it. So if you'd like to pick one up at the break, there's a stack of them up in the front here. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Is your Wall Systems Library going to be converted to a
Question is, will the Wall Systems Library and the walls that you generate be converted to Revit files? And that is, we are talking about that. That will be in a later phase, but not initially. But I think, would you like to see that?
Oh yeah, especially if it comes with all the R values and fire ratings and all that. That would be extremely helpful.
Okay. Yeah, that's our plan. Yes. I have a timeline on phase 1, and I'm going to say 6 weeks. It could be 3 or 4 weeks. It could be next week. Anton and I have to discuss. But as far as phase 2, the timeline on getting the fire ratings and the R values, I don't even want to speculate, but it's not going to be until we do the initial launch, and much longer, not much longer, but a period of time after that. Sure. Betty.
There are magazines down on the table downstairs. There are some magazines down there.
Okay.
We don't have enough room for anybody, but not all your articles.
Great. So you can pick up a reprint of the article here, which is 4 pages, or downstairs you can pick up the entire magazine. Questions? Yes.
I appreciate your effort in trying to standardize. I readily acknowledge we need that. We do not do it. If you're looking for feedback,
Yes.
I'm having a hard time with this. One of the reasons is because immediately it's a conversion from CSI format, which has been a mainstay. There's nothing starting with 04, for instance, in your diagram. So I'm dug out of water right from the start. That's okay.
Okay.
That's all right. I can swallow this, and we all have to go through new systems. That's fine. But the second issue I'm having is that this is more from a perspective of doing takeoffs after the design is done. You're not starting with the structural load-bearing assembly, which is really the basis of design. If you start the other way, then we're just constantly going to be battling on hearing all day long. Are we on the architectural design side, or are we on the structural side, which means we can then integrate directly and then work out from that?
Right.
So I think we need resolution within the BIM-M group as to where our focus really is.
Sure. Okay, so Kanan, twofold input, constructive criticisms, and thank you for that. What about master format, and what about considering the building structure? I'll answer the second part of the question first. This is a limited scope project that only looks at the wall. We don't care if it's steel framed, concrete framed, or load-bearing masonry, which it should be, right? All walls. Just kidding. We're not even considering the structural framing. Of course, it's a building, and the building is a system, and that's an important information. But this is limited in its scope, and that's the same reason why we don't show flashing or terminations and things like that. It does not follow master format, but these numbers are contained within Uniformat. And that I don't recall the ASTM standard number, but there's an ASTM standard called Uniformat that classifies building systems, and it's independent of master format. And we have made every effort, and I think succeeded in our numbers will be a subset of the Uniformat wall enclosure category. Which, if you want more information on Uniformat, I have a copy of the ASTM standard, and I can make that available to you. Mel. Okay.
File. Similar to the file used for detail. Does this conform to that same Revit
Well, if Revit's Uniformat is ASTM E1557, standard classification for building elements, yes.
For assembly.
For assemblies?
Yeah, for assemblies and
Well,
assembly.
Here's the thing about Uniformat, is it only drills down so far. So it starts with a very broad spectrum, and then and then you get into your wall, and you've got masonry walls and veneer walls, and then that's where Uniformat stops. Because Uniformat does not attempt to tackle the world of masonry like Tile Council has tackled the world of tile. It's an information classification standard. And we're the masonry experts, those of us in this room and those of us on the BIM-M committee. So we're kind of picking up where Uniformat stops, and we're organizing information to even a further level of detail than Uniformat.
I mean, if you want, I will compare it to what all of it built as a text file for assembly. So,
Sure. I'm interested to know your feedback, Mel. You've been asking good questions all day, and I'm sure all the other presenters have appreciated them, honestly. So I hope we can open up a dialogue. It would be great to have your input. We need input. As you guys have gathered today, many of these initiatives are evolving, and we thrive on input. We want to make something that is useful to BIM practitioners and aspiring BIM practitioners as an industry. We want to make it so easy for you to design with masonry and develop these tools that you can do so in a very effortless way.
I am not familiar with Uniformat.
Yes.
Where is it used?
And Uniformat is it's the ASTM standard is ASTM.
Where is it used? When do you use it?
Honestly, I don't, it's like a dictionary. How do you use a dictionary? When you want to know the definition of a word, you can look it up. If you want to know where roofing membrane, where that falls within the category of building materials, that kind of assists you.
Estimators.
One second, Arthur.
Estimators, contractors, and because they build the building up from the bottom.
Okay.
They would call the system.
Estimators, contractors, and constructors of buildings refer to Uniformat as an information classification.
That's what it's saying. It is the format of choice used by the federal government, at least as far as studies.
Okay, and that's from CHA. Thank you, Arthur. He said that the government agencies use Uniformat. Is Richard still here? Richard G. from GSA? Or did Rich take off? Rich will put you on the spot. I think you have there. Rich? Does GSA use Uniformat is the question for Richard. Capital programs uses Uniformat. Okay. And is that it's an alternative to master format? Is that right? Or is it supplementary to master format?
Yeah.
All right. Danilo's saying no.
Don't use master format. That's the second.
Well, CSI developed master format, and that's, I think, how most of us write our specifications. I don't know personally how Uniformat interrelates with master format, if it does. It's a little bit probably out of the scope of this wall builder tool, but it warrants further investigation because we want to make sure that we comply with established standards. Other questions or comments? Anybody else? All right. Okay, well, I think, do we take a break now, Dave?
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for your attention.